Hello, this is some old guy in Hawaii, and we need to talk for a minute about a recurring problem with a lot of modern Trek. Apparently, it is now okay to flaunt regulations and disobey direct orders in Starfleet as long as the end result can be viewed as positive. As long as one's actions end up saving the Earth or the Federation or the galaxy or averting war, or even just progressing a line of inquiry, one can expect to suffer few, if any, real consequences. One might even get rewarded. This happened in Discovery, it happened in Picard, and now it's afflicted Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Discovery introduced us to Michael Burnham, who assaulted her own commanding officer and tried to take her man, only to be caught, court-martialed, and deservedly imprisoned. Granted, this was to give us a strong, gritty, independent protagonist at the bottom of her arc, but basic military discipline was applied. Flash forward to Season 3, however, and Burnham is now second in command to Saru, and because of the burn and an extreme shortage of dilithium, Discovery, with its spore drive, is now the Federation's on-call 911 ship. Ship and crew need to be ready to respond to any emergency anywhere in the Federation at a moment's notice. Burnham gets a lead on a clue to the cause of the burn and wants to go follow it up, but Starfleet says no because, 911 ship. Burnham ignores all this, takes her boyfriend's ship, and sneaks away with Giorgio to go track down the lead. She disobeys the orders of her own CO, Saru, and the head of Starfleet, deserts her post without telling anyone, leaving the Federation's emergency on-call vessel unknowingly short-staffed in a key position because she has a good reason and she knows she's right. And yes, she comes back with the information, but then what? Well, in a realistic military organization, not only would Burnham have been court-martialed again, easily convicted and imprisoned, this time throwing away the key because, not the first time, but Saru would also have been relieved of command. It's his ship, meaning everything that happens on it is his responsibility. Instead, the head of Starfleet, while expressing displeasure with the whole affair, leaves Burnham's discipline to Saru and walks away. And Saru relieves her of the post as the executive officer. He has to find a new second in command. And that's it. No reduction in rank, no loss of pay or privileges, or really any kind of significant penalty. Now, I don't recall if Discovery did anything like this again, especially after Season 3 when I stopped watching, but that incident is ridiculous enough in its own right. Then we get Picard Season 3, wherein Picard and Riker go aboard the Titan on false pretenses, fake inspection, and lie to her captain to get him to take them somewhere. They do this knowing that getting caught will cost them their careers and more, but Riker at least humorously comments it's only if they get caught. It doesn't work, but Seven helps them get where they want to go and helps them steal a shuttle. And Picard and Riker at least do it to go to Beverly's rescue, even though they have no real details about her predicament at that point. Seven, on the other hand, disobeys her own CO on nothing more than a hunch and misplaced loyalty to a former friend. Remember, she didn't call Picard and Riker to explain their actions until hours after she'd already ordered the Titan on course to the Righton system, and she helped them steal his shuttle, and she didn't come clean to Shaw when he discovered the situation. Now, in episode 5, to be fair, the three of them are ready to face the music and take responsibility for their actions, but that's interrupted by the Starfleet is compromised, we need to run plot, so we don't get the resolution on these issues till the final episode. Except that for Picard and Riker, it never happens. At least it's never addressed on screen. As for Seven, who has an audience with Admiral Tuvok, the only one holding her accountable is Seven herself. She's there to submit her resignation, which in a real military would not happen if one is facing charges. But Starfleet is not charging her with anything. On the contrary, they're so happy she helped save the Federation. They promote her and give her a ship of her own. Gross insubordination is rewarded. Okay. And then we come to Strange New Worlds. The first episode of Season 2 finds the Enterprise undergoing upgrades at Starbase, Pike off running an errand, and Spock in command. Uhura deciphers a distress call from crewman Singh that originates from a dilithium mining plant that alternates monthly supervision between the Klingons and the Federation, part of a peace settlement from the last war. Spock wants to go investigate. Admiral April says no. A Federation ship showing up during the Klingons' rotation could start a war. Investigating will have to wait till the Federation has jurisdiction in a month. Spock ignores this, going with his gut and giving the rest of the main bridge crew the option to bow out or even report his actions to April. Okay, no such offer to the rest of the crew. The bridge crew all go along. They effectively steal the Enterprise, go to the planet, nearly start a war, but also thwart a plot to start a war. So happy ending. Spock presents himself to April for discipline. April says, nah, just don't do it again. Okay, yes, there is a hinted need to not start a war with the Klingons when they might soon have to fight the Gorn, but seriously, just don't do it again. In Starfleet, the ends now routinely justify the means. Okay, why is this really bad? Well, because despite not being an exact copy of real-world modern militaries, Starfleet is still a pseudo-military organization with most of the trappings: rank, chain of command, rules and regulations, and a certain level of expected/enforced personal and group discipline. And all of that becomes meaningless if people think they can just do whatever they want, whenever they want, without real consequences. Okay, this issue is a byproduct of a much larger issue with recent Trek, both creators and fans, specifically their familiarity with and understanding of how military and military cultures work, or lack thereof. Something like 95% of all Trek that has ever been, or at least official Trek, has involved Starfleet personnel serving on Starfleet vessels or Starfleet facilities. It's baked in. Now, I understand the need to tell stories with characters taking risks and believing in themselves and making tough choices, but in a credible, functional military organization, blatantly violating established norms is the exception, vice the rule, and doing so without good reason, or even with good reason sometimes, still has stiff penalties. All of these episodes exemplify gross insubordination without good reason that is not punished, and that's not believable. Okay, Trek storytellers need to understand that if Starfleet has no credibility as a believable military organization, Star Trek's credibility as science fiction goes out the window. Okay, now there is one to some elephant in the room I need to address, that being the events of Star Trek 3 and 4 as precedent. So let's do that. In Star Trek 3, Kirk and company steal the Enterprise, go to the Genesis planet as expressly forbidden by Starfleet, and later destroy the Enterprise to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. In Star Trek 4, they are on their way back to face the consequences when circumstances force them to time travel to the past, grab some whales, come back, and save Earth. At the very end, the crew stands before Starfleet to accept punishment. Starfleet decides to drop all charges except the one levied specifically at Kirk and punish him alone. Now, this has been touted by some as the get-out-of-jail-free card for the Picard Season 3 crew, and I don't doubt others, perhaps even some writers, look at it as precedent for the other incidents I just described. Okay, but the TOS crew example differs from those others in several ways. First, Kirk and company stole an empty ship that was slated for decommissioning. Every one of the other examples involved grabbing ships with active missions and hazarding their crews. In the case of Discovery, God knows who else would be at risk if the ship got a call to respond to an emergency submarine Federation. In the case of Picard, Titan has a crew of 500, Strange New Worlds Enterprise has a crew of over 300. Okay. Also, with regard to Picard Season 3, Kirk and company had no illusions about not getting caught. Finally, and most importantly, Star Trek 4 did see punishment meted out. Yes, all the charges against the other crew, other than Kirk, were dropped, but Kirk was removed from whatever post he previously held as an admiral and reduced in rank. Reduction in rank is a pretty standard penalty for many serious military infractions. Now, did the punishment fit the crimes in this case? Highly debatable. I'd say they all got off easy, and they all knew it. Yes, it put Kirk back where we wanted him, captaining a ship, but even he and the crew didn't expect a new Enterprise. They were expecting something a lot smaller and less impressive given their recent offenses. Nevertheless, significant punishment was in fact applied. Respect for Starfleet rules and regulations and the principles of accountability for violation of these things, the glue of any military organization, were upheld. In the case of the other three, the worst that happened was Burnham was removed as XO. And I honestly think none of the writers understand what an executive officer actually does. Picard and Riker are ignored, Spock is told don't do it again, and Seven is handsomely rewarded. Friction with Starfleet, okay, questioning the rules and the regulations, even the chain of command, these are fine and a source of good drama if properly utilized. Trek has done it many times before, but we cannot have our protagonists, members of Starfleet, defying themselves and supposedly growing as characters by committing gross insubordination and then suffering no consequences. Every time we do it that way, Starfleet looks like a joke, and by extension, so does Star Trek. Okay. One final related point with respect to Strange New Worlds. Spock and company disobeying orders, stealing the Enterprise, and almost starting a war, but not being held responsible is bad enough on its own. At the same time, however, we have Una, former number one, under arrest and facing court-martial for lying on her Starfleet application. Okay, the incongruity is embarrassing. Una's situation makes Spock and company's fate look even more stupid. Star Trek has always played it a bit fast and loose with Starfleet, but it's never been this bad, this ridiculous. Stop doing this. Figure out how a real military organization operates, establish the ground rules for how Starfleet differs, off screen at least, and then write accordingly. Stop making Star Trek a joke.